Hi, you want to watch this episode if you're curious whether or not the CDC has a credibility issue. You know, a couple weeks ago, the CDC reversed their course in terms of how they were talking with the United States of whether or not you needed a mask. So at the beginning, yes, you need a mask. Now you need to be social distance. Now you don't need to be social distance. Now that a large percentage of the U.S. population is vaccinated, you don't need to, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask in public or indoors. You know, the problem is the message is mixed. It is not consistent. It is not clean or clear all the time of who the CDC is talking to. And the most important thing is that the message immediately upon hearing it felt like it was an immediate swap, a flip of the course. So any large corporation who has had any form of crisis at some point in time knows this. Hopefully many of them know this before the crisis happens and hopefully has tried their best to avoid it. And that is when you're managing expectations, when you're managing the communication to a large group of people, you need to be consistent. And what the CDC did was not consistent. So is there a credibility issue with the CDC? The answer is yes. And now here's the worst part. We did put the CDC in place, the U.S. government, at some point in time with the intent of understanding as they would say, the science and the mechanics and all the components around what is safe and what is not safe, and to be able to look to an authority to let us know when there is an issue and what we should do about it. And if in the future the CDC says something and more people ignore it because either those people in power say to ignore it, not necessarily a good thing, or because of this flip-flop, they ignore it, you know, then it's going against what we put that organization in place for in the first place. So first, I've been doing a number of different radio talk shows where people have asked me the question, is the CDC having a credibility issue? The answer is yes. What somebody actually said, one of the hosts, which I loved it, they said, Mitchell, if you were asked at the beginning of the pandemic what you would say and how you would do it, what would you say? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, what a great cue up of a question. So let me see if I can share that. So now let's take ourselves back to the point where we have no information other than know we are going to be having a worldwide pandemic, which we now, as humans, kind of know what that means and what it means around the world. But there's still so many things we don't know. So here's what I would have said. There's a health scare that is real, and it will cause a problem not just in your local neighborhoods, but around the world. And what we have to pay attention to is we don't know all the answers. As a matter of fact, there are many that we don't know. We know there's a problem, and we know that we don't want to share it. We don't know exactly how it is transmitted. We don't know what to do or what not to do. So what we will do is we will share information as much as we have over time, and we will share them with different organizations who will then interpret that information and share it with you. So if you want to see the raw stuff we're sharing, we will do that. But we will also share it with the state organizations, with the mayors, with people responsible for large organizations, and allow them to interpret the rules appropriately. And here's the goal, that we get to the point where this is not a problem and does not kill millions and millions of people. So that's what we want to do. What I would like to encourage you to think about is the safety of yourself, your immediate family, and those around you. So in scenarios when you're even safe, the question you have to think about is, are you putting those around you in jeopardy? And so let's make sure that as we are interpreting the news and following these instructions, let's make sure we do the right thing for ourselves, our family, and those around us. So that's what I would have said. Now, let's assume and this is what I read when I was reading in the details, that the recent sort of blunder with the CDC, who then said, hey, if you're inoculated, then you don't need to wear a mask in public or outside or inside. Now, the problem is when people heard that was a sudden flip. What people heard, they didn't hear mask or not mask, particularly for those people who didn't want to wear masks in the first place. And so they just heard, oh, it's okay to go around without a mask, right? And the thing that's interesting is it was a flop. It was a change. So first, how do people interpret that? Okay. And the second, what does it really mean? Because maybe that change, and I'm just going to say that the reason I believe from reading between the lines that the CDC did this was the intent to try to get more people to get vaccinated, because they want to say if you're vaccinated, you can then go without a mask. They didn't communicate that properly, right? They should have been very clear about the specific messaging if that was the messaging. But even so, how do you determine, on a mass scale, when people are vaccinated or not, right? We're not putting a letter on our forehead. We don't have, our cell phones are not always communicating. And many people forge the answers. So some people say they do and they don't really mean it. So because they don't believe in it in the first place. And so what the CDC originally set up was a structure where they came up with the best answer they can, and then they started sharing that with the states and the governors and the mayors so that they can make their own interpretation. And then all of a sudden one day they said, hey, just because I can communicate with everyone, let's just share it with everyone. And they completely bypassed and caught off guard all those people who need to actually implement the approaches, the policies, the procedures. And what they did is they not only made it confusing to the people at the end customer they want to reach who didn't understand it, they also made it difficult for those people who are implementing their policies. And once again, when the next time happens where something changes, maybe it's a variant and something has changed, or maybe it's the next COVID-19 that comes about and we have to do it again, at the moment, there's a credibility issue. So what I encourage the CDC to do is to come out and to actually potentially even have a policy of PR people they could talk to. What would this mean? What would happen? How best do we communicate this? What are the organizations we could communicate it to? If we want to bring it to the public, when do we do it and how? And what is the type of things to say? I'm not saying to hold back any information from the public. What I am saying is try to make sure that you can interpret it from multiple points of view so that we can restore back into the CDC the credibility they absolutely deserve, because we're looking to a particular organization approach to be neutral, to be interested in the human population and doing the right thing for humans. And so if you're in a situation and you're having a credibility crisis, or you potentially interpret one, what's appropriate is to do the right thing, to be able to do something that is of benefit, not just to you and those immediately around you, but the overall population. So what's the takeaway from what I just said? If you're following a process or procedure of communication, stick with that process or procedure. And also have people around you, particularly if you're affecting millions or billions of people, have people around you who can see multiple sides of what you're communicating, so that instead of just off the cuff saying something that is interpreted incorrectly and causing damage for days, weeks, months, maybe years, instead of doing that, why don't you try to stop that from happening before you even start, so that you can maintain the credibility, stay the course, be consistent, follow the appropriate level of change management, which is simply say what you're going to do, say what you're doing while you're doing it, and say what you did at the end, and make it consistent. Hope you find this useful. Look forward to hearing comments and questions and feedback. And thank you so much. Take care. Bye now.